Usually when we talk about something like a medical diagnosis, right?
Hmm.
There's this really comforting expectation of precision. It's almost like engineering.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like you break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at the screen and says, well, there it is.
Right. It's binary. Like the fracture's either there or it isn't. The solution is just, cast it, let it heal, and move on.
Exactly, it's clean. But then you step into the world of personal energy or mental boundaries and, navigating malicious people, and suddenly that x-ray machine is just completely useless.
Yeah, the precision goes right out the window.
It really does. We're looking at a landscape that is just incredibly murky. And this murkiness, I think it really peaks when we start talking about concepts like divine protection.
Oh, for sure.
Because for a lot of people, and especially if listening to this right now, if you are completely new to any kind of spiritual practice or religious framework, the phrase divine protection sounds like, well, it sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
It sounds like magic.
Right. You picture this glowing, mystical force field dropping down from the sky to just like bounce bullets and bad vibes and toxic emails away from you, all while you just stand there completely passively.
Which is, it's a very cinematic pop culture way to look at it.
Yeah.
But it fundamentally misrepresents what these historical and spiritual texts are actually trying to teach.
Yeah.
When we actually examine the mechanics laid out in these traditions, that whole force field concept just completely falls apart.
And that is exactly why we are here today. So welcome to the deep dive. We are taking this really fascinating premise and unpacking it for you. Basically, what does divine protection actually mean in a practical, everyday sense?
Right.
Because as we dig into this massive stack of sources you've provided for us today, what emerges isn't this magical passive shield at all. It is a highly strategic, incredibly active framework for securing your peace and your prosperity.
Exactly. We are looking at a profound paradigm shift here. It's moving away from seeing protection as this magical event that just happens to you to understanding it as an active state of alignment. It's an integrity that you build from the inside out.
I am so thrilled to get into this because the stack of materials we have for you today is just phenomenal. We're looking at ancient scriptures, specifically the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition's Psalm 36, which is known as Psalm 37 in the Western tradition.
Yeah, Psalm 37.
And we're also pulling in Deuteronomy chapter 28, a little touch of Romans 10.17. But we aren't just treating these as ancient historical artifacts in a vacuum, right?
No, not at all.
We are pairing them directly with modern applications. So we're going to explore how these literally thousands of years old verses are being synthesized with modern routines, like the 369 method.
Which is super popular right now.
Yeah, very. And we'll be looking really closely at the specific rituals and spiritual warfare tactics developed by a modern author and content creator named Blaize On'Fyah.
So our mission for this deep dive is highly specific. We are going to decode the actual mechanics of this concept of divine protection. We really want to show you how these varied sources outline a method for maintaining unshakable stillness.
Stillness, yeah.
And we're going to examine the strategic importance of refusing to match toxic energy. And finally, how you can use personal integrity to literally build a lasting generational legacy of security.
What I love about this stack of sources, though, is how incredibly relevant these ancient texts are to our modern epidemic of burnout and stress and anxiety. I mean, you absolutely do not need a theology degree to understand this.
No, definitely not.
You don't need to be intimidated by the religious jargon. At the core of it, we are talking about the basic human struggle of dealing with difficult people, managing your own internal chaos, and just trying to build a life that actually lasts.
And before we go any further, I do want to offer a quick point of clarity for you as we navigate all these materials.
Good idea.
The sources we are exploring today are deeply rooted in spiritual and religious traditions. And, they make very real, very powerful claims about divine intervention. But our goal today is to impartially explore the ideas, the strategies, and the psychological frameworks within these texts.
Right.
Regardless of your personal background or your belief system or even your level of skepticism, there is a profound psychological architecture here that we are going to extract and examine together.
So let's figure out how this actually works. To understand divine protection, the sources make it explicitly clear that you first have to stop actively sabotaging your own peace.
Yes. You have to establish a baseline.
Exactly. And that brings us to the first line of defense, which is the strategy of stillness. This is entirely based on that Ethiopian Orthodox Psalm 36 or Western Psalm 37.
And this specific text is such a brilliant starting point because of its classification. It is a wisdom psalm.
Which means what, exactly?
Well, unlike other ancient texts that might be, say, a desperate, real-time cry for help in the middle of a literal battle, or like a spontaneous song of victory, this reads entirely differently. This reads like an experienced, battle-tested elder sitting you down to pass along profound, highly practical life advice.
And that context really matters, right? Because the author here is traditionally understood to be David.
Hmm.
And this is a guy who literally fought wars. He lived as a fugitive in caves. He navigated massive political betrayals.
Yeah, his life was not quiet.
No, he isn't writing from a monastery somewhere. He's writing from a life of intense conflict. And yet, he does not mince words about what the ultimate defense actually is.
He's very direct.
Very. Verses 1 and 2 start with a direct command. The text says, "Fret not yourself because of evildoers, neither be envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be withered like the grass and fade as the green herb."
Fret not. It's a deceptively simple instruction, but psychologically speaking, it is one of the hardest things a human being can do.
It really is, because fretting isn't just being a little sad. Fretting is active. It's biological.
Oh yeah, the cortisol.
It's pacing the floor at 2 a.m. It's chewing on the inside of your cheek. It's letting the anxiety consume your entire mental bandwidth, like rehearsing arguments in the shower. And David is explicitly saying, stop stressing over corrupt people who seem to be winning.
And to really understand the weight of that command, you have to look at the metaphor he uses right after it. He compares the success of corrupt people to green grass under a hot sun.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
So in the ancient Near East, the climate is brutal. Grass can sprout up incredibly fast after a brief heavy rain, and it looks overwhelmingly lush and vibrant. It looks permanent. But the moment the scorching desert sun hits it, it withers, it turns brown, and it dies almost instantly. The text is telling you that the success of ruthless, underhanded people is an optical illusion. It completely lacks deep roots. It is fundamentally temporary.
And then we get to verse 7, which introduces the core mechanism of this strategy. The text says, "Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself because of him who prospereth in his way." It is literally calling for a sacred stillness.
Yes, and it goes on to warn against the ultimate trap, which is envy and anger. It says, "Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself in any wise to do evil." The text is warning you that when you hyper-focus on what underhanded people are doing, like when you're obsessing over that coworker who takes credit for your work or the competitor who lies to get ahead, you lose your own footing. You become tempted to use their corrupt tactics just to keep up or to get revenge.
But my worry here is that being completely still just makes you a sitting duck.
It feels like that, yeah.
I mean, if someone is actively plotting against me, if they're slandering my reputation or trying to ruin my career, human nature screams that if I don't fight back, they win, they destroy me. That biological fight or flight response just kicks in. We are wired to defend ourselves, so telling me to cease from anger feels incredibly dangerous.
That is the exact friction the text is addressing. Of course, your biology tells you to fight back on their terms, but the text is arguing that matching that toxic energy is a catastrophic tactical error.
Really? A tactical error?
Yes, it's not about taking the moral high ground just to be a nice person. It is a calculated defensive strategy. Because when you try to outmaneuver a ruthless person by adopting their messy tactics, you corrupt your own character.
Yeah.
You give away the one asset that provides ultimate power and clarity, which is your internal peace.
It makes me think of getting into a war in the comment section with an internet troll.
Oh, perfect example.
You're sitting there, your heart rate is like 120 beats per minute, cortisol is just flooding your system, and you are furiously typing out the most devastating, perfectly crafted reply for 45 minutes.
We've all been there.
And the result, you both end up down in the mud, looking completely unhinged to anyone watching. But the crucial difference is only one of you is actually enjoying the chaos. The troll feeds on it. You just derailed your entire day, your productivity is shot, and you literally did it to yourself.
That is exactly the dynamic. You handed them the keys to your emotional state. You allowed their external chaos to dictate your internal environment. The strategy of stillness, according to this wisdom psalm, is recognizing that true, unshakable strength is quiet. Look at verse 11. "But the meek shall inherit the earth and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace."
Okay, we absolutely have to pause on the word meek because in modern colloquial English, meek is practically an insult.
It really is.
It sounds like being a doormat. It just sounds like weakness.
It is arguably one of the most misunderstood words in historical texts. In the original languages and context, meekness does not mean weakness or a lack of capability. It means immense power kept under strict, disciplined control.
Like a controlled burn in a forest rather than a wildfire.
Exactly. Or take the classic historical analogy of a highly trained warhorse.
Oh, I like that.
A warhorse has terrifying bone-crushing power. It can trample an entire enemy line. But it only moves when the rider commands it. It doesn't flinch at the sound of battle, and it doesn't charge wildly just out of anger.
Wow.
The text is saying that the person who can control their reactions, the person who possesses the power to destroy an opponent but consciously refuses to lash out when provoked, that is the one who possesses actual dominance.
But if I am being the perfectly controlled warhorse, just standing there amidst the chaos, how is the threat actually neutralized? Like, what stops the corrupt person from just continuing their attack?
That is the natural progression of the question, and the text answers it by introducing the concept of divine justice, or what we might colloquially recognize as a form of karma. Look closely at verses 12 through 15. The text says, "The wicked plotteth against the just, and gnasheth upon him with his teeth. The Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming."
The imagery there is wild. God laughing at the arrogant.
He laughs because he sees their expiration date. The architecture of their own destruction is already built into their methods. The text explicitly outlines how this mechanism of justice works. It says, "The wicked have drawn out the sword to cast down the poor and needy. Their sword shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken."
So they build the trap, and then by the sheer mechanics of their own deception,
They fall right into it.
they fall into it.
Precisely. The very weapons, the lies, the underhanded tactics that corrupt people designed to destroy others will ultimately pierce their own hearts. You don't actually have to fight them.
Right.
You don't have to ruin your own character, lose sleep, and lower your frequency to exact revenge. Time, natural consequences, and divine justice do the heavy lifting for you. Your only job is to maintain your stillness, keep your hands clean, and let them exhaust themselves.
See, that is a massive paradigm shift. It takes all the pressure off of me having to be the agent of vengeance. But here's the problem. Telling a modern, overstimulated brain to just be still and let karma handle it is like, well, it's like telling a Category 5 hurricane to calm down.
Yeah, good luck with that.
It just doesn't work without a mechanism. We are wired to obsess. So how did these texts actually enforce that stillness on a daily basis?
This is where we move from the beautiful theory of stillness to the rigorous daily practice of filtering your inputs and setting your intentions. You cannot achieve that level of stillness if you are constantly consuming chaos. And our sources point to a very specific mechanism for this, which is establishing auditory boundaries.
Which brings us to Romans 10.118. In the traditional King James Version, it says, "So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God."
To really grasp this, we have to put ourselves in the historical context of the ancient world. Literacy was incredibly low back then. Personal copies of scriptures or books were virtually non-existent. I mean, they were expensive scrolls locked in temples or synagogues.
Right, people couldn't just pull up an app.
Exactly. People didn't sit in a quiet, private room and read silently to themselves the way we do today. They learned by listening. Texts were spoken, chanted, memorized, and recited aloud in communal gatherings.
So the text is highlighting that spiritual growth, or, building the psychological resilience we were talking about, isn't a passive, silent process happening in the back of your mind. It is actively triggered by what you let into your ears and your physical environment.
Exactly. The text argues that not just any noise will build true spiritual power or mental fortitude. If you want unwavering faith or unshakable peace, the frequency and the actual substance of what you are listening to must be rooted in divine truth and wisdom. It's a call to be radically intentional about your auditory diet.
Which is almost impossible today. I mean, think about our mornings. The alarm goes off, and before our feet even hit the floor, we are grabbing our phones. We are instantly absorbing global tragedies, stressful work emails, and the highlight reels of everyone else's lives on social media. We are just flooding our auditory and visual diets with panic and envy before we've even brushed our teeth.
Which is precisely why this source material introduces a highly structured countermeasure to this modern chaos. It's the 369 method, combined directly with the themes of Psalm 36.
So let's look under the hood of this 369 method. The sources mention that this originated as a manifestation technique popularized by Nikola Tesla's theories on the divine code and mathematics of the numbers 3, 6, and 9.
Yeah.
But in our materials today, it's being adapted specifically for scriptural integration. It involves taking a core intention and writing it down by hand 3 times in the morning, 6 times in the afternoon, and 9 times in the evening.
The first step the source outlines is taking the massive, overarching themes of Psalm 36 and condensing them into a single, highly personal decree. He gives you 3 very specific options to choose from. The choice depends entirely on what kind of protection or realignment you need most in your life right now.
So if I am someone who is just completely overwhelmed by workplace drama, or like I'm constantly being dragged into family arguments, what am I writing?
For that, you would choose option A, which focuses on peace and letting go of messy energy. The affirmation is, I rest in the Lord, protect my peace, and trust my steps are ordered. This pulls directly from verses 7 and 23 of the Psalm. It is a deliberate, conscious recentering away from external noise.
But what if I don't just want peace? What if I am actually being slandered? Like, what if I have been overlooked for a promotion I deserved and someone else took the credit? Peace feels a little too passive for that.
Then you move to option B, which is for elevation and vindication. The affirmation is, my light shines like the noonday sun. I am building a legacy of abundance.
Oh, I like that one.
Right. This draws from verses 6 and 26. This is much more offensive in a positive sense. It's for the person who feels undervalued. It's a daily reminder to your subconscious that your integrity will eventually become impossible for the world to ignore.
And then there is option C, which the source calls the ultimate shield. I will not fret over the chaos. I am sustained, protected, and walking in unbothered peace. That reflects verses 1 and 37.
This is the fortress. This is for when the storm is actively raging around you, when the attack is undeniable, and you need to forcefully remind your nervous system that you are secure despite the external evidence.
So you pick the option that fits your battle, and then you begin this daily ritual. Let's break down the psychology of this 369 rhythm, because the timing isn't arbitrary, starting with the morning, 3 times. The source calls this the seed.
The instruction is to execute this first thing in the morning, absolutely before you pick up your phone, turn on the news, or let the world's noise in. You open a physical journal and write your chosen affirmation 3 times. Psychologically and neurologically, you're setting the atmosphere for your entire day. We know that writing by hand engages the reticular activating system in the brain. That's the filter that decides what information is important to notice throughout the day.
Wow, okay.
You are planting the seed of Psalm 36.1, essentially making a binding contract with yourself that you will refuse to let evildoers or daily stressors dictate your morning energy.
You are taking the driver's seat and locking the doors before the world can jump in and grab the wheel?
Exactly.
Then we hit the afternoon 6 times. This phase is called the shield.
This happens right in the middle of the day. This is when your morning resolve usually breaks down. Work is frantic, you've just received a passive-aggressive email, or you're hitting that 2 p.m. wall of cognitive fatigue.
Oh, the 2 p.m. wall is real.
It is. So you force yourself to stop, take 5 minutes, and write the affirmation 6 times. This aligns practically with the concept of resting in the Lord. You are actively interrupting the momentum of the negative energy you've accumulated since breakfast. You are grounding yourself and reminding your subconscious who actually holds the blueprint of your life, pulling yourself out of the weeds.
And finally, the evening. 9 times. They call this the harvest.
This is right before you go to sleep. You write it 9 times. The focus here is deep psychological integration. The source references Psalm 36.37, the end of that man is peace. You're letting that specific concept of protected peace be the very last thing your brain processes before entering REM sleep.
Makes sense.
You are consciously releasing the battles you fought that day, allowing your spirit and, critically, your physical nervous system to rest in absolute security rather than grinding over tomorrow's anxieties.
Okay, I am looking at this and my inner skeptic is just screaming. Isn't this just positive affirmations? Like, you know, the old Saturday Night Live sketch, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
Yeah, Stuart Smalley.
Right. What makes writing this down 3, 6, and 9 times any different from just trying to think happy thoughts and hoping for the best?
It is a vital distinction to make, and the source material directly anticipates this skepticism by providing 3 pillars for success that elevate this practice far beyond simple, empty positive thinking. The first pillar is shift your focus entirely. The fundamental rule here is that while you are writing these sentences, you cannot hold the image of the people who crossed you in your mind. If you're writing, I protect my peace, while simultaneously seething over what your boss said at lunch, the ritual completely fails. It requires absolute disciplined focus purely on the divine protection and elevation promised to you, ignoring the antagonist entirely.
That is incredibly difficult. You are essentially demanding that your brain drop its obsession with the threat. It forces a complete mental and physiological pivot.
Exactly. You cannot be in a state of gratitude and a state of rage simultaneously. The second pillar reinforces this. Feel the reality of the verse.
Hmm.
This ritual relies heavily on emotion and sensory language. As you write, you can't just rote copy the words. You have to tap into the feeling. You have to physically imagine the warmth of that noonday sun vindicating you. You have to physically feel the relief in your shoulders as you accept that your steps are ordered. Neuroscience demonstrates that the brain actually struggles to differentiate between a vividly, emotionally imagined scenario and a real one. By feeling the release before the vindication happens, you are physically rewiring your state of being.
And the third pillar is where it really clicks and stops sounding like a self-help gimmick to me. Keep your hands clean. The text says, "Depart from evil and do good."
Yes. The ritual only works when your daily actions match your pen. The writing sessions are a hard boundary, but they're also a behavioral contract. It means you cannot write, "I trust my steps are ordered at 7 a.m." and then spend your 1 p.m. lunch break gossiping, lying, or undercutting your colleagues to get ahead. The hypocrisy shatters the alignment.
Oh, wow. So it is a holistic behavioral contract requiring absolute unflinching integrity. You are demanding supernatural protection from the universe, but the universe is demanding that you actually be the kind of person who can hold that protection.
Precisely. You are forcing an alignment between your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical actions. When those three things lock into place over a period of time, the sources recommend a minimum 7-day duration. The shift in your reality and how people respond to you is profound.
Which begs the next question. What happens externally when that internal environment is finally mastered? Like once you have the stillness, once you are keeping your hands clean, what does the reality around you start to look like?
Our sources shift gears here to provide what is essentially the Old Testament's ultimate blueprint for momentum. We are looking at Deuteronomy 28, verses 1 through 10.
This specific passage in Deuteronomy is widely considered one of the most powerful and comprehensive texts in the Old Testament regarding divine alignment, prosperity, and supernatural protection. But it comes with a strict, non-negotiable prerequisite. Verse 1 begins, "And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments."
Hearken diligently. Again, we're seeing that it's not passive. It's active, intentional obedience. It is doing the work. It requires deep, diligent alignment with those principles of integrity we just discussed. But when that alignment is achieved, the text lays out 4 massive, sweeping promises. The first is what we might categorize as supernatural momentum. Verse 2 says, "And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee."
I love that specific phrasing, overtake thee. You aren't chasing the blessing.
Think about how much of our modern lives, our modern economy, is spent desperately chasing opportunities, chasing validation on social media, chasing the next open door, networking until we drop, operating in a constant state of hustle and anxiety.
It's exhausting.
The blueprint here suggests something radical. When your alignment's correct, when you are maintaining that internal stillness and doing good work, you don't have to aggressively hunt down elevation. The elevation hunts you down. It overtakes you from behind while you are simply walking your ordered path.
The relief in that concept is just staggering. You just do the work, keep your hands clean, and trust that the momentum will find you. The second promise in this blueprint is total environmental dominance, verses 3 through 6. "Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out."
What is structurally fascinating here is the implication that the favor, or the blessing, is completely attached to the person, not the geographic or economic location.
So to translate that into modern terms, it doesn't matter what platform you're building on, what specific market you enter, or if you have to relocate across the country for a new job.
Right? You aren't successful just because you managed to get into the right city or the right field at the right time. You are the catalyst. You bring the blessing to the environment. The text also explicitly mentions that the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy ground will be blessed. In today's knowledge economy, that translates to your children, your creative projects, your business ventures, your art. Everything you produce carries that same mark of protection and favor because it originated from your aligned state.
The third promise is where my mind was blown. The ultimate defense strategy. Verse 7 says, "The Lord shall cause thine enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way and flee before thee 7 ways."
The numerical contrast there is striking and highly intentional. One way in, 7 ways out.
It makes me think of dropping a massive boulder into a muddy puddle. The opposition comes in as one solid, unified mass whirl. Maybe it's a coordinated group of people conspiring against you, or just a massive, suffocating wave of anxiety and trouble. But the moment it hits that divine pushback, that internal fortress of stillness you've built, it shatters. The kinetic energy of the attack violently scatters in every possible direction.
Let's take that boulder analogy even further. The boulder doesn't have to attack the water. The boulder just has to possess absolute solidity and density. The kinetic energy of the incoming attack is dispersed by the unyielding nature of your defense. But we must remember the caveat. This mechanism only activates if the person maintains that internal stillness we discussed with the warhorse. If you panic, abandon the stillness, and try to fight the unified front on their terms, you step out from behind the boulder. You absorb the impact yourself.
And if you manage to stay behind the shield, it leads directly to the fourth promise, public vindication, verse 10. "And all people of the earth shall see that thou art called by the name of the Lord, and they shall be afraid of thee."
It is important to note that afraid, in this ancient context, often translates closer to in awe of or having a deep, reverent respect for. The promise is that your work, your integrity, and the calling on your life will become so glaringly obvious, so structurally sound, that even outside observers, even your harshest critics, will have to respect the authority you operate under. It is undeniable proof of concept.
This source material puts a huge, bold capstone on this entire section. It says, "You are blessed, but you must believe it in order to receive it."
Which neatly ties everything together. The stillness, the 369 writing, the auditory boundaries, they are all daily tools designed to build and reinforce that core, unshakable belief. If you don't genuinely believe you are protected, you will constantly act out of fear and scarcity, which immediately breaks the alignment required for Deuteronomy 28 to manifest in your life.
Okay, this is all an incredible theoretical framework for building long-term peace, but let's ground this in harsh reality for a second. What if you, the listener, are hearing this right now and you are already drowning? You don't have time to build a long-term theoretical framework because you are in the thick of a mental, spiritual, or financial crisis today. You're facing eviction or a crushing depressive episode.
That is a crucial reality check. The theoretical framework is the goal, but sometimes you need an emergency intervention. You need triage. And our sources provide a highly specific, tactical response for exactly this scenario, formulated by a modern practitioner named Blaize On'Fyah.
I want to spend some time on Blaize On'Fyah because understanding her background is the only way to realize why these practices are so potent. She really bridges the gap between ancient texts and modern chaos.
Absolutely. The source material paints a very clear, very grounded picture of her multifaceted world. Blaize is not some detached guru living on a mountaintop, meditating for 10 hours a day. She is a single mother of 8 children and a grandmother of 4.
Let that sink in for a moment. A single mother of 8. The level of daily chaos, the logistical management, the financial pressure, the emotional bandwidth required to navigate that existence in a modern economy is practically unimaginable to most people. She is operating in the absolute trenches of real life.
She is the ultimate modern laboratory for stress testing these ancient concepts. Beyond her family, she's an author. She's written books, coloring books, journals, and a soon-to-be-published book called Lost, Alone, and Afraid, which specifically deals with surviving mental health crises and maintaining well-being.
She runs a Facebook group called Are We Vibin', where members share relationship advice and network. She's an entrepreneur researching and creating natural hair and skincare products since 2016. She creates daily YouTube content to motivate and provide comic relief. She is doing all of this simultaneously.
The point of thoroughly examining her biography is to understand that the spiritual warfare tactics she shares aren't theoretical or academic to her. They are the exact, hyper-practical methods she used to survive and eventually thrive while carrying an immense load. She didn't have time for a 3-hour meditation. She needed a protocol that worked amidst the screaming kids and the bills. She is sharing what practically pulls her and her loved ones out of scarcity.
Which brings us to her specific triage method, the 7-day money ritual and the 8th-day prayer. Let's break down the mechanics of what she actually does.
The ritual begins by taking 7 physical $1 bills. After reading Psalm 37, which remember is the foundational psalm of maintaining stillness and not fretting, you place those 7 bills inside your physical Bible directly on that scripture. You do this at the exact same time daily for 7 consecutive days, running concurrently with the 369 writing method we discussed earlier.
And the source notes a specific action. After reading the scripture, you count out the $7 bills 3 times, then place the money back. And as you place it back, you ask for a specific multiplication vocalizing that you want it multiplied 20-fold, 88-fold, or 100-fold.
To understand the numerology here, in biblical traditions, the number 7 represents completion, the cycle of the week, the completion of creation. You are completing the cycle of intention. But then comes the 8th day. 8 represents new beginnings, resurrection, stepping into a new reality.
On this 8th day, the ritual shifts gears dramatically. You take the $7 bills out of the book, place them in a bowl, sprinkle a little salt over the money, and recite a highly specific spiritual warfare prayer.
I know the physical elements sound unusual to a modern ear, but if we analyze the text of the prayer she uses, it is a masterclass in targeted psychological and spiritual intervention. It doesn't just ask for generic, vague blessings. It acts like a laser, specifically targeting 4 distinct areas of profound internal struggle.
Let's go through these targets because they are incredibly universal. The first target is depression and discouragement.
The prayer states, I reject the spirit of heaviness and put on the garment of praise. Directly referencing Isaiah 61.3, it asks to be reminded that you are not alone. Psychologically speaking, this is a conscious, vocalized refusal to let despair be your default operating system. You're actively commanding your mind to seek out and recognize joy, breaking the loop of depressive rumination.
The second target is nightmares and bad dreams.
The text says, I plead the blood of Jesus over my mind, my body, and my spirit. I declare that my sleep is a gift. I renounce and cancel any assignment of the enemy in my dreams. We know that for someone experiencing intense trauma, PTSD, or severe anxiety, the night is often the most dangerous time.
Oh, absolutely.
The subconscious takes over and runs wild. This part of the prayer is an attempt to reclaim the bedroom as a safe, protected sanctuary, setting a boundary for the subconscious mind before sleep.
The third target is fear and anxiety. The prayer rejects the spirit of fear, claiming power, love, and a sound mind, pulling from 2 Timothy 1.7.
Notice the specific phrasing there, a sound mind. It's not just asking for the emotional feeling of fear to magically dissipate. It's asking for cognitive clarity. It's asking for the executive function of the brain to come back online, allowing you to think rationally, strategically, and peacefully in the absolute center of a crisis.
And the final target is shame, condemnation, and guilt. The prayer says, I thank you that there is now no condemnation. I repent of my sins and trust in your forgiveness.
Out of all 4, this might be the most critical for long-term success. Shame is the heaviest anchor a human being can carry. It is the insidious voice that tells you that you don't deserve divine protection or prosperity or peace because of your past mistakes, your failures, or your divorces. This part of the prayer explicitly severs that anchor, granting yourself the grace to step into the newness of life.
Okay, I have to play the skeptic again here. I am looking at this 8th day ritual, and I am sorry, but putting physical dollar bills in a bowl and sprinkling salt on them feels like I'm making a magic potion. For someone who isn't religious or who is highly analytical, what does this actually achieve in a practical sense?
It is completely understandable to view it through that lens. But to understand the true efficacy, you have to look at the psychological weight of what happens after the prayer is finished. The physical items are just anchors for the behavior. This is where the sheer brilliance of Blaize's method really shines. The source material introduces a final step that we can call the law of circulation.
Right. The text says that after the 8th day, you must take those same 7 $1 bills out of the bowl and bless 7 different people with them, $1 per person. You tell them the dollar is blessed, and the only thing you ask in return is that they bless someone else with a dollar the next time they experience a blessing.
This is the crux of the entire exercise. Whether you view this as a supernatural intervention activating divine multiplication, or as a profound cognitive behavioral method of psychological rewiring, the real-world effect on the practitioner is identical.
Unpack that. How does giving away $7 rewire your brain?
Think about the baseline mindset of someone who is driven to do this ritual in the first place. They're likely struggling financially, emotionally, or both. Their baseline state is severe scarcity and terror. They're clutching tightly to whatever meager resources they have, terrified of losing more. But the culmination of this entire 8-day process requires them to physically, intentionally give their money away to strangers or friends.
Wow. It forces you to physically act out the role of a benefactor. You are role-playing as someone who has more than enough.
Exactly. You physically cannot maintain a crippling scarcity mindset in the exact moment you are generously giving to others. The physical act of giving breaks the cognitive grip of fear. It signals to your own brain and to your immediate environment that you are provided for. You shift your identity from being a helpless victim of your circumstances to being a conduit of abundance. Blaize notes in her writing that this specific method worked for her and her loved ones, often bringing unforeseen blessings before the 7 days were even up. That shift in posture completely changes how you interact with the world, how confident you are in interviews, how you carry yourself, and consequently, how the world interacts with you.
That is profound. It moves from a passive plea for help to an act of radical generosity. And that evolution leads us directly into our final phase of understanding. We've covered finding immediate internal peace, achieving that external environmental dominance, and using active triage rituals to combat acute struggles. But where does this all ultimately lead? What is the point of all this protection?
The final destination of divine protection isn't just about surviving today's crisis or even having a highly profitable year. The true endgame, according to these texts, is securing tomorrow for your lineage. It's about building generational security. To fully grasp this, we have to return to the breakdown of Psalm 36.
Let's look at verses 25 and 26. This is David as an old man reflecting on the totality of his life and everything he has witnessed. He says, "I've been young and now am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. He is ever merciful and lendeth, and his seed is blessed."
His seed begging bread. It's a stark, devastating image of generational poverty, trauma, and desperation. The text is making a massive, audacious claim here. It is arguing that the spiritual integrity and the disciplined stillness of the parent constructs a literal protective shield over the children and the generations that follow.
The sources contrast two very different types of legacies to prove this point. Let's start with the legacy of wickedness, or the legacy of messy, toxic, reactive energy. Look at verses 21 and 22. "The wicked borroweth and payeth not again."
The source analysis explains that wickedness, or living out of alignment, inherently breeds a scarcity mindset. It relies on taking, hoarding, defaulting on obligations, burning bridges, and leaving a wake of relational and financial chaos for the next generation to clean up.
And there's a chilling visual for this in verses 35 through 38. David says he saw the wicked in great power spreading out like a massive green bay tree. They looked completely unmovable, dominant, and terrifying. Yet he passed away, and lo, he was not. Yea, I sought him, but he could not be found.
It cycles all the way back to the very first verse we discussed. The green grass under the hot sun. A massive tree built on corrupt soil, built on exploiting others, might look terrifying and dominant for a season, but it has no eternal root system. When the inevitable cyclical storms of life hit economic recessions, famines, social upheaval, industry shifts, it vanishes without a trace, leaving nothing for its descendants.
But then you have the legacy of the upright. The text says, "A little that a righteous man hath is better than the riches of many wicked."
Value of clean money.
Exactly. Clean money, earned with integrity, paired with a peaceful conscience. The upright person might not have the massive, flashy overnight wealth of the corrupt tree, but their resources are stable. Verses 18 and 19 promise that in times of trouble and in days of famine, the upright will be satisfied.
Because righteousness breeds an abundance mindset. Even if they don't have massive surpluses, they are inherently generous. They show mercy and they give. And because of that consistent integrity, verse 23 tells us, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord.
And verse 24 follows it up with my absolute favorite visual in the entire text. "Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand."
I think about this like walking a tightrope across a massive, terrifying canyon.
Explain how you see that playing out. If your steps are ordered, you are on the right path, doing the right things. But you are still fundamentally human. The wind blows, your foot flips, you make a bad investment, you say the wrong thing, you stumble, you fall off the wire. If you are walking alone, relying solely on your own perfection, that fall is fatal. But the text says God is holding your hand or your wrist. You have a safety harness. It is not a promise that you won't trip and experience a moment of sheer terror. It is a promise that the fall will not destroy you. You will be pulled back up onto the wire.
And the most beautiful part of that analogy is that the safety harness isn't just for you. The core message of this entire breakdown is that by living with integrity, by refusing to match toxic energy, and by doing good, honest work, you establish a track record of stability. Your integrity becomes the safety harness for your children. The peace of an ordered parent creates a regulated nervous system in the child. Your right choices create a structural, spiritual, and financial legacy that protects them long after you are gone.
So to synthesize this incredibly deep journey we've been on today, divine protection is not a magic spell or a fantasy force field. It is a highly strategic, disciplined architecture. It starts internally. You have to refuse to match the toxic energy of the people trying to drag you down. You have to embrace the power of the war horse and find your stillness.
Then, that stillness is actively maintained by what you allow yourself to listen to and the daily intentions you set, utilizing the disciplined, brain rewiring structure of tools like the 369 method.
From there, it manifests externally as environmental dominance, as we saw in Deuteronomy 28, where the blessings hunt you down and your enemies scatter in 7 different directions because they hit the boulder of your peace. And if you find yourself in an acute, suffocating battle, you use active triage tools like Blaize On'Fyah's 8-day covenant to force your psychology out of fear and into abundant generosity.
And it all culminates in that generational endgame, where your quiet, disciplined integrity builds a legacy so profoundly solid that your descendants never have to beg for bread.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we always want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. We spend so much of our lives obsessing over justice. When someone wrongs us, when the world feels unfair, we want a front row seat to watch our enemies fall. We want them to know we were right.
We've talked extensively today about how this framework builds generational security for your family. But if we pull the lens back even further and look at the society we live in today, I think there is an even larger implication here. We live in an attention economy. Social media algorithms, news cycles, and political outrage machines are literally designed, engineered, and monetized to keep you fretting. They profit off your anger, your anxiety, and your engagement in the comment section wars.
So what does that mean for the strategy of stillness?
It means that in today's world, choosing sacred stillness, refusing to match toxic energy, resting in the Lord, isn't just a matter of personal spiritual protection. It is the ultimate form of modern rebellion. It is an act of financial and cultural defiance. When you refuse to fret, you are literally starving the algorithms that feed on your chaos. You are depriving the outrage machine of its fuel.
That is incredible to think about. What happens to the world when enough people simply refuse to participate in the panic? What if the highest level of victory isn't destroying your enemies, but becoming so deeply unbothered that you bankrupt the systems that rely on your anger? When the dust settles, Psalm 36 gives us the final verdict. Mark the perfect man and behold the upright, for the end of that man is peace.
What would your life and the world around you look like starting today if you decided your ultimate goal was no longer to win the argument, but to simply outlast the noise?
Thank you so much for joining us and exploring these profound concepts. Until next time, stay grounded, protect your peace, and keep walking your ordered path.
Yeah, blaze up! Ready or not? Yeah, I'm coming for the